Peace and love, Imari Fawuyi here, coming to you live from the beautiful city of Sao Paulo, Brazil. And today I want to talk a little bit about raising global children and what that means and what that can look like. And then, some of the wonderful aspects of it and also some of the challenges. That first clip was my daughter's recent performance with Dança das Estrelas. So she did Dancing with the Stars here for a local dance company. And yeah, she did her thing, and I mean, you've seen her there. She was shining, she was doing her thing, but it took a lot of grit and a lot of hard work, and it took a lot of cultural competence for her to get there. And I feel like that has been gained because of the lifestyle that she grew up in, which was one in which we did navigate living in a variety of countries. We did a lot of traveling. She had to settle in and get used to a life that was, very unique and very challenging for her in certain ways, but also provided her with a certain level of flexibility, of dexterity, and ability to learn new things, learn new languages, and just flow in realities that are different from the ones she may have spent her childhood in. My oldest child is 21, my daughter, and she and I did a lot of traveling when she was small, so she really didn't grow up in the United States. But, we had times where we were there for a year or two at a time, so she did experience the U.S. as well. Of all the places we've lived, I have seen her develop the most here in Sao Paulo, Brazil, and I think that has a lot to do with just how much interfacing you're doing with different cultures, with different music, with different dance, with different things. It's a very international, cosmopolitan city. And so my daughter has been able to, go and experience and experiment with whatever it is she's passionate about. I mean, she grew up dancing as a small child, but because of all of our travels, I wasn't always able to keep her engaged in like a particular program for long periods. So, for a lot of time, I thought that I had maybe, taken her away from her real passion. But you know how it is in life. You eventually find your way back to the things you're passionate about. And so over the years, I kept her with me. We would be salsa dancing. We would go out and enjoy things that, she originally enjoyed when she was a younger child. And so when we moved back out here, she was able to pick that up in a more serious way and pursue it more. And I just think that, it can be really powerful to get your children out there, and experiencing the world and experiencing different things, not just being so honed into one culture, one way of doing things, because when you do that, it allows you to just be way more flexible in life in general and to really tap into what your real passion is. A lot of times when you're limited in your exposure to things, you aren't even exposed to enough things to even know what you really love. And so I think that our travel and our lifestyle has been very conducive for her. When my daughter first told me she wanted to do Dancing with the Stars, for the company that she had been training with, I, was excited for her. I thought it was dope, very brave of her, and also a big challenge that she was taking on. But it was a challenge that was not free of issues, because we are in a different country. We're in Brazil. So there were certain challenges. Number one, her not being fluent in Portuguese and having to learn all this, very quite complicated choreography, plus just getting more technique and all of the things that come with learning dance and choreography. And, through her 8 months of training for the event, she had her days, it was kind of like she loved what she was doing. It was fun, but it was also really hard. The communication was hard with the the teachers and the students. She does speak Portuguese, but it was a lot of ego she had to deal with, especially with the teacher. There was just a lot of things that she went through that she had to navigate through, and I was proud of her because she did go all the way to the end. She never let nothing deter her. She never thought about quitting. She was always very dedicated to what she was doing, and it just was a testimony to me of just how much the lifestyle that we had led had allowed her to accept the fact that she wasn't going to understand everything about how things are done here, how people communicate, how they plan things, how they make things come into fruition. But she hung on to her own hope and knowing that she was talented and that she could do it. And it ended up being a really great expression for her. I was really excited for her. And these are some of the things when you are raising children globally. They're going to be getting involved in things and they're not going to know what's going on sometimes. It's going to be awkward. They're going to be learning cultural dances. Now, salsa is not from Brazil, as y'all know. Salsa is from Spanish-speaking Spanish-speaking countries, but Latin countries. But, at the end of the day, you're going to have challenges trying to do anything new in a different country. And so when you're preparing a move and you're thinking about bringing your family international and you're wondering how it will go for your children, especially as they're older, if they're older children, there are a lot of things that they're going to have to adjust to, and you can't get around it. And that ability to adjust like that is what really makes them, more global-minded and more global citizens in a way, because you don't think that your American way of growing up is the only way. You actually know that even if you don't understand things all the time, that it's okay because it's not yours. You're not from that. And so despite the challenges and frustrations that come with that, you still can hold space, you can still be patient, and you can still just kind of be humble and get what you need to get out of the situation and give to the situation. And so I think it's a really amazing growth tool to travel with kids, and especially to go and try living in different places, especially if you're coming from America. Because one of the things about Americans is that they're known for thinking that, that they live in the best country in the world and it can't get no better than this. And I think all of us are waking up to the reality that that is just not a fact. There are a lot of countries where people live well, where they have beautiful cultural expressions, they have the arts, they have dance, they have music, they have a culture that is functional, not just a culture, but a society that is functional, that is safe. They're modern, but still connected to, roots and nature and all of these things. You have these things all over the world. And so we're all learning that whole American fairy tale is just not the truth, especially when you get out in the world and travel. And so I think it's a big gift you can give to your children, to expose them to different things and allow them to go where they need to go and where they want to go with those things, to explore themselves deeper. Now with my son, Aliun, he's 14 years old. He's a creative. He's also a martial artist, so he does art, martial arts, and music production. That's his thing. And so, moving to Sao Paulo is amazing in that way because there's so much, there's so many resources you can tap into around the arts. So that's been great for him. But he did kind of grow up in the Caribbean mostly, so he's used to that lifestyle. So moving out here hasn't been all peachy keen for him. He is slower to pick up the language, even though he can hear it and he can speak some. And, it's harder for him because he doesn't move around super freely on his own. So that means that, he doesn't have as many opportunities to go and be social. And so I have to be very intentional about getting him out there and creating and forging relationships for him by connecting with the mothers of certain teens so that he can, make those connections on a regular basis. So it's a lot of intentionality on my part for him. But I think he is starting to get used to and enjoy living in Sao Paulo and the good quality of life that we do have. While he did grow up in the Caribbean where it was, beach and sun and fun with his boys, he's getting used to enjoying the friends that he has here and giving thanks for what it is that we have here, because it is a very quality lifestyle for us. and we live well. Trying to raise children in another country, globally in this way. I know it's not for everyone. For me, some of the challenges that have come up are around feeling a sense of guilt sometimes, when you feel like you need to go elsewhere, and that involves taking your children out of, their familiarity and the things that they're used to, and requesting that they adjust to something new, not knowing if that's going to go well or not. And sometimes it's gone better than others, and for me, I've had to accept excuse me, that this is just part of the process. When the children do get to another country, especially when they're older, they can feel, kind of isolated and homesick, and actually might even take some of that out on you as a parent for making the decision to leave. But I know for me, I left during the pandemic, for instance, to Brazil because I didn't like the way things were going on the Virgin Islands with that. And, I've left for purposes that were valid to me, that I felt were preservative of my family's mental health and peace. And I never regretted the reasons why I left. But it doesn't mean that it's easy, even if you as the adult feel like you have a good reason to make the decision to move forward. And so it is really important that, you take the needs of the child in mind and really, really consider it when you decide where to go in particular. And so one of the other issues that stands out as being, very predominant is the issue of language acquisition. For my son, that has come slower, mainly because he's less interested in Portuguese in this country, for instance. And he has had a little bit more frustration with the move than like my daughter has. My daughter's older. She came and kind of threw herself in and wanted to learn, and she's getting it. He also is learning and is having fun more so now that he has friends and children that he knows it would be nice to be able to communicate in Portuguese with. His friends are bilingual already, so that helps him out because he can speak English with them, but he is more interested in learning the language. But it's time when that is, when you're sorting that out, it can be really difficult, because I know from my own experience, I had tried to take him to do different activities. I, put him in the local kind of community center where he could go play basketball and meet people. I've done a number of things, his martial arts classes and different things like that, to see if, it would help him grow his Portuguese and also be more social. And I would say those things haven't really proven to be good ways to socialize my son. I've had to then take other measures, which meant connecting with people in the expat community, people who maybe had Brazilian or American children that were of his same age range. And that is how we've started to make connections and friendships, for him. But ultimately, it's really challenging. It's not easy socially for them. And with the homesickness and them just not being used to the culture in general, it can be an uphill battle to a degree, because you don't want to get into the grips of guilt when you're doing something that is good and positive in general and safe, but yet one of your children isn't fully satisfied or happy with what you're doing. So yeah, I'm glad to say that we have gotten to the other side of that, and he's doing a lot better now. But for a while there, I was like, ooh, is this the right thing? Third challenge that I could speak of with moving abroad, living abroad, raising your children abroad, has to do with, having a black child, a melanated child, and the different challenges that come with that, especially a black son, because we know that a lot of times they can be targeted, especially in countries that have a history of racism and all of the things that this country, just like the United States, has. It's hard to sometimes know, whether things are going to be safe for them, and really, really carve out a path for them to be able to be connected to their own, be able to be connected to folks that look like them. Here in Sao Paulo, Sao Paulo, the state is, very, very, very melanated. But because of the gentrification process here over the last 100 or whatever years, they have pushed most of the people that look like us into the periphery. It doesn't mean you don't see them all the time. There are plenty of melanated folks here in the city center, but mostly they live in the outskirts. So that means the neighborhoods that we would choose to live in, so that we can have access to organic produce and lots of shopping, and a lot of the amenities of this area are here in the center. So if we move to the outskirts, we're going to be missing out on a lot of that, even though we'll be seeing more people that look like us. So the challenge is, picking somewhere where you're comfortable with the fact that you're going to have to do maybe some extra work to be in communion and to link up with people who are melanated, basically. And so I am blessed to be able to maneuver in this culture and in this country pretty well. So I know what needs to happen so that I can keep my son, connected to other brown folk. But it can be really challenging. A lot of people, they come to Sao Paulo and they're just like, oh, it's so nice, but it's so white. And they don't understand kind of the history and how things work here. And, like black folk, melanated Brazilians, they have their own events, they have their own venues, their own things. So you have to know how to tap into that. And that is what will allow you to kind of feel more comfortable. I mean, at the end of the day, you want to be comfortable wherever you're moving. You want to feel like a sense of home. And the way that you can feel that sense of home is by, being able to connect with people of similar cultural, similar energy and vibe as what you're used to or where you come from. And so we have figured out ways to kind of navigate that, particularly through basketball, which he's not actively playing on any league right now, but his friends are, so he meets children that way as well. And there's a lot of course, brown boys playing basketball out here. So yeah, this is a real concern for a black family that will be moving to Sao Paulo, for instance. Lovely city, but you have to know how to navigate it so that it works for you and so that you feel comfortable. 5 things you can do to prepare your children for a move globally. Number 1, make sure you talk to them ahead of time. Try not to spring the trip on them at the last minute, like, hey guys, we're gonna move across the world for a little while. See if we like it. That's not how you want to do that. You want to prepare them ahead of time. You want to talk to them about what's coming, give them some insight into what their experiences may be once they touch down. Teach them whatever you can about the culture that they'd be moving to, and prepare them. Allow them to watch videos, allow them to get a sense of the community, and just give them some kind of sense of what they can expect when they make that move. Number 2, you want to allow them to grieve, okay? So the grief process often comes after they touch down in the new place, but you want to allow them to have their process of feeling what they feel, going through whatever sadness or depression, as long as it's not something that's just taking forever, and just seeming really unhealthy at a point. But grief is a natural process of losing something, and so you want to allow them to go through that. You can't force the new place on them. You can't force them to like it, to say good things about it, to pretend like they're having fun, because honestly, a lot of change for anybody can be really challenging. And so you want to be super sensitive to that with your children. Number 3, include them in the research process. So when you're deciding on the location that you're going to be moving to, you want to make sure they're in on it, that you're getting a lot of nods of approval, that they seem like this is something that could potentially work for them, that they'll be drawn to the culture, drawn to the people, and interested in diving in and delving in more wherever it is you're going, okay? So you want to expose them to the place, expose them to the country on a variety of levels. There's, obviously social media and YouTube and all of those places provide us with a ton of information about pretty much every location on the earth. So you want to take advantage of that and get them comfortable ahead of time as much as you can. Another really important one that I've always done with my children is focusing on keeping one activity anchored. So, if you have activities that your children have been doing for years, like my son has been in martial arts for years, my daughter's been dancing on and off for years, you want to keep those activities anchored. You don't want to come and then all of a sudden they just have to do a whole bunch of new stuff. You want to keep something familiar in place so that they feel rooted down, grounded down. Oh, I'm still doing some of the stuff that I'm accustomed to doing, that I'm good at. Because remember, children, they as they grow with things, they become better and better at it. And no one wants to have to go somewhere where they can't even do anything that they feel like they're really good at and have worked hard to get good at. And so you want to have that one activity that makes them feel grounded and that you can anchor down in their lives, that they can stay doing as long as they want to. I mean, at a point, a lot of times, especially teenagers, they start to get bored with activities. They want to try something different and what have you. But, until they come to you with that, it's best to keep that one activity. And I'll say the last thing is just preparing them for all of the questions around their identity and where are you from and all of these things, because, for people like us, that's complicated. Where are you from? We can barely even answer that question, right? Because we lived in so many places. So, just preparing them for that, giving them something they can say. That also, in the type of geopolitical environment we're in, you almost need to be careful talking about being American and stuff like that. So you have to really be smart about that and prepare the youth and the children ahead of time for those questions, because they'll be coming. They're becoming a lot, especially in Ubers and different things like that. So it's something to consider. And just to touch on lastly, my philosophy and the way that I see being global and living global, and especially doing it with family, is, one of the tenets, one of the things that I believe in is that it's very important that you say yes to the host country, that you say yes to the new reality, and that you embrace the local. Don't stay so stuck in I'm American that you become obnoxious to people. I know some people around here who, people that haven't even been to the U.S. in 8-9 years themselves. They've been traveling the world, but they've grounded here in Brazil, because a lot of people do end up coming to Brazil and wanting to stay. And the whole time they're talking about America, America. And it's like, but you don't even be out there. America is going through hellish shit right now. Like, you don't be out there to even be talking that. But it's just that brainwashing. They get you early with the America is the greatest country in the world. It has the best things. Meanwhile, people can't even find decent and real food to eat. So, it's a whole lot of America, America shit. And I just say, it's better to just embrace the local. Be comfortable. That mean you don't rock your stuff and that you're not, connected with where you come from. But all of that, being so obnoxious about a country that you clearly don't want to live in is very interesting to me. So I would just say, it's important that you definitely embrace the local. Do not be out here looking stupid talking about how great your country is, because we all know now that that's not even a fact. Another tidbit that is helpful and that I kind of live by in this lifestyle, raising my children in the way that I have, is that it's important that you allow the children to go through discomfort, So instead of dramatizing discomfort, you allow them to walk through that, because discomfort, is a part of just being here on this planet, being here. You're going to go through those things. As an adult, you're going to go through things that don't feel great at first, but you have a feeling that it's something you need to continue to work through. Just kind of like the story I told of my daughter and everything she went through trying to acclimate to, learning the dance for her performance over several months in a situation that was challenging for her on a variety of levels. So it is important that you don't, over parent and try to intervene in a way that is overbearing when they're going through their process, because they got to learn to work through these things. And so while you don't want to be traumatizing your children with instability or yanking them from place to place and all of these kind of things, you want to support them. You want to have good reasons for what you're doing, and you want to be respectful of the things that they want and need, but you also need to allow them to feel the discomfort, and learn how to adjust themselves and calibrate themselves to their new environment. And I think it's really important because it is character building, because those people who, kind of overdo it and try to protect their children from everything, I think a lot of times make it so the children don't get to develop the same way. And so when they come into adulthood, then they're really having a hard time because they just don't really know how to get through and to manage when times get rough and tough, or when things are suboptimal to them or whatever. So I think that's another really good kind of thing that I live by, philosophy or whatever. Allow them to go through discomfort. And lastly, I think it's important that in this lifestyle of being global with your children, that you encourage them to still just authentically be themselves, so that when they are in these environments where they don't feel like they're represented, they can represent themselves and who they are and where they come from, and do that from an authentic space. You don't have to become anyone else. You don't have to mimic anyone else. Yes, you can learn new languages. Yes, you can learn about different cultural activities and things that take place in the host country, for instance, but you can still just be yourself and you can shine with that, and it's okay. There's all kinds of different people on the planet, and you don't have to become something else. You can always still just be yourself, even in a different environment, even in an environment where nobody's necessarily quite like you. They don't have the same worldview, or they don't, they don't have the same cultural practices. You can learn new things, adjust to your environment, but still just be yourself. And I really try to encourage that with them. And so everywhere we go, we're still just authentically what we are, which we're from the United States. We have some of, the baggage of that, but mostly we are open and keep our hearts open to other and new things while still being ourselves. And I think that is super important, because you don't want them to feel confused, or identity diffused. You want them to feel whole and solid with who they are. And so the best way to encourage that is to encourage them to just be you. And that is something that I think goes throughout life. It's a really great skill set, to know how to be authentic, to know how to not have to feel like you have to do anything in particular to fit in anywhere with anyone. And it just allows them to develop that stronger character at the end of the day. So thanks for coming by to check out the video. Please put a like on the video and subscribe if you want to learn more about moving to Brazil, traveling globally with children, living in different countries, and all that good stuff. We talk about it here on Find Your Free. And please, please, please check out my links and all the info in the description. We offer consultations. We also offer tours here in Sao Paulo, Brazil, for those who are looking to come and explore. And we offer relocation consulting for those who actually want to move to Sao Paulo or to Brazil, because we lived in other parts of this country. So if you are interested, check out my links below, and